there is a way to put an end to this war. It's, again, not rocket science. It's not rocket science. A negotiated settlement is what I'm talking about. And this is what should have happened. This should have happened from the beginning. And it almost did happen, actually. Zelensky and the Russian negotiators were this close to reaching a negotiated settlement back in April. Now, you might not have known about this, but Fiona Hill, a name you might recognize from the impeachment hoax trial, wrote a piece in Foreign Affairs magazine where she admitted that Zelensky and Putin were this close to a settlement. She said, according to multiple former senior U.S. officials we spoke with, in April 2022, Russian and Ukrainian negotiators appeared to have tentatively agreed on the outlines of a negotiated interim settlement. Russia would withdraw to its position on February 23rd, when it controlled part of the Donbass region and all of Crimea, and in exchange, Ukraine would promise not to seek NATO membership and instead receive security guarantees from a number of countries. Now, if you're thinking like me, you might be thinking, well, what the heck ruined this? Why didn't this happen? The reason for this is in April of 2022, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson went to Ukraine. You might remember the photographs of Boris Johnson walking around with Zelensky. It was, again, propaganda and a photo op, basically. Boris Johnson visited Zelensky, and suddenly after Boris Johnson left, Zelensky pulled out of these negotiations and refused to negotiate anymore. Now, is this a coincidence? Because Boris Johnson is one of the most powerful lobbyists for defense contractors around our globe that exists. Is it a coincidence that his wife, Boris Johnson's wife, Carrie Simmons, has been one of the biggest proponents of so-called green energy policies, climate changey stuff, through Boris Johnson's government in the United Kingdom? Is this a coincidence or is this not a coincidence? I would argue that there is not even the slightest chance that this is a coincidence because of what the globalist agenda is. The globalist agenda needs these forever wars. They don't want an end to this war. They don't want Ukrainian victory. They want, whether it's money from the UK or money from the US, they want hundreds of billions of dollars to be spent in Ukraine on an ongoing basis. But here's the thing. This should not be up to Zelensky. I know he's the president of the country. It should not be up to Zelensky whether or not he negotiates an end to this war. We're giving him the money. We should control his decisions. It's like when parents send their kids off to college and their kids are like, Mom, you have no right to see my grades, or Dad, you have no right to know what I'm doing on the weekend. Oh yeah, they do. They're spending their money. They're funding your college experience. You're darn right they have a right to know what's going on. They still control you if they're paying for what you're doing. The same principle applies here. We are paying for Zelensky to fight this war. You're darn right we have a right to force him to negotiate a settlement, because it's not only in their best interest, it's in our best interest. And our interests matter when it's our money funding the war. I don't even care about the particulars of this negotiated settlement. We know that any negotiated settlement is going to encompass three things. It's going to require some sort of neutrality from Ukraine, which is fine. That's essentially what they should have done in the beginning, is be this buffer state between Russia and the rest of Europe. It's going to require a prohibition on NATO membership, which is also fine. This is either fine, like kick the can down the road 10, 20 years, or I think we can all see why it wouldn't be a good idea for Ukraine to be in NATO anyway. And it's going to require some infringement or some concession from Ukraine on some of their territory, whether this is Crimea, whether it's the Donbass region, whether it's both, whether it's part of both. I don't know, and I don't care. We know that those are the three things that are going to be required in a negotiated settlement. The question is whether this is going to happen now or whether it's going to happen years from now, after who knows how many people have been killed over there, and who knows how many hundreds of billions or trillions of our taxpayer dollars are being spent to fund this war. It is time to make a settlement deal. Period. It is not up to Zelensky. It is up to us. It is our money funding this war.